chaplaincy. We are going to be studying the foundation, the understanding of chaplaincy in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. One thing I want you all to know, the first thing, is that all chaplains are pastors, but not all pastors can be chaplains. To be a chaplain, first, you have to become a pastor. The same education of a pastor, the same experience of a pastor. You must be in a church for 2 to 5 years minimum to get what we call that pastoral presence, that pastoral understanding. Because when you come out as a chaplain, they are going to be looking at you and they are going to be addressing you and they are going to be treating you as if you were their pastor. They expect a chaplain to be a minister, regardless of your denomination. So with that in mind, let's look at what is chaplaincy and what is not chaplaincy. Let's begin with what is not a chaplain. Sometimes people will say, well, this young man or this older pastor, they really cannot be a pastor in the parish. So if he cannot be a pastor, let him be a chaplain. Wrong. That is not a chaplain. Someone will say, well, this chaplain is getting tired, is getting old, his hair is getting whiter. Oh, let him be a chaplain. Wrong. To be a chaplain, you need to have a lot of energy. To be a chaplain, you have to get up early in the morning, be on time for devotionals in the hospital, run around the hospital, visiting patients, providing pastoral care to staff. And if you're in the military, oh my, you have to keep up with the troops. So if you are ready to retire, you can't be a chaplain. Maybe you can help part-time, but without the experience of a chaplain, you can't be a chaplain. Sometimes we look at somebody and says, well, he's too lazy to do anything else. Let him be a chaplain. Wrong again. To be a chaplain, you have to be ready to wake up at any time of the night, in the middle of it, when someone is dying in a hospital. Your alarm goes on, your phone goes on, your beeper goes on, whatever you have, they will call you. You have to get up, be ready to provide pastoral care. Also, sometimes, well, we don't know what to do with this person, this young man or young woman. Well, let him be a chaplain. No. To be a chaplain, it requires to have specialized training. So what do you have to do to be a chaplain? Well, let me tell you a little bit about what is chaplaincy. Chaplains are pastors that specialize in institutional ministry. What that means, that a chaplain is a pastor that besides having the same training of a pastor, the same experience of a pastor, then they go farther in their education. Usually, that is with education that is postgraduate education, whether that is a master's or a certificate, something more than a pastor. So they specialize in that. Then they not only specialize in training or in schooling, they also have to gain experience as a chaplain. We have different programs. One of them is called clinical pastoral education, especially for chaplains that are working in institutions such as hospitals, nursing homes, and any other health-related institutions. But we have discovered that this training is also very, very good for those people that are also in any other kinds of chaplains. Chaplains are trained to give what I call a spiritual care. So they are spiritual caregivers. Chaplains not only provide that care, but also they are spiritual counselors, spiritual mentors, spiritual guides to all kinds of people. Chaplains also specialize in spiritual counseling. And they do that work to leaders, to counselors, And they mentor the young, the old, the new, and the experienced leaders. So chaplains need to be ready to work with all kinds of people, no matter who they are. In an institution, that's where chaplains spend most of their ministry, they are supposed to be able and be ready to work with all kinds of leaders, from those that work in administration and management, the top executives, and everybody else. Now, let's look at what else is important for chaplaincy. And before I go on, I'd like to share with you a passage. Someone wrote the description of what is a chaplain and what are the qualifications of a chaplain. And this is what she said. And I can imagine that you are already saying, I know who that person is. And this is what she said. She said, this institution needs men of thought and ability. And she was talking about the chaplain of one of our first colleges. She said, the institution needs a person of culture and experience. It is of great importance that the one who is chosen to care for the spiritual interest be a man of sound judgment and undeviating principle. A man who will have moral influence, who knows how to deal with minds. We are talking about a chaplain, and the reason why I know that is because someone that takes care of the spiritual interest is a pastor. And this pastor that she's talking about is someone in an institution, therefore is a chaplain. Chaplains are pastors giving ministry in institution. And she goes on and says, he should be a person of wisdom and culture, of affection as well as intelligence. Keep that in mind. And then she goes on and says, the greatest wisdom and gentleness are needed to serve in this position, acceptable yet without unbending integrity. My friend, is this someone that is too lazy? Is this someone that cannot work in the church? Is this someone that just graduated from school? Absolutely not. And then she goes on. And she said, this place should not be filled by a man who has an irritable temper, someone that gets upset, nor by a man or woman of sharp combativeness. The servant of God should seek rightly to represent our holy faith. Keep that in mind, my friend. The chaplain is the one in an institution, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a university, whether it's in the military, in the police, or whatever he is representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You can imagine that. They are the face of the church to a world outside the church many times. Yes, in most of our institutions, a large number of the students are Adventist. But I know institutions that have 80, 90%, 97% of their student body that is not Adventist. One of those institutions has 8,000 students. It's a university. And the chaplains in that institution, there are 12 of them. They represent the Seventh-day Adventist Church. These young people, most of them will graduate, will go to work in government, in business of that great country, and they will not become Adventists. But their image that they have, the image that they will carry into their lives of the Adventist church will be that they were able to learn from the chaplains. That is why she said that the person that is a chaplain should know how to show and represent our holy faith. She goes on and says, represent the Savior's matchless love. The worker must be imbued, filled with the Spirit of Jesus. And then the treasures of the soul will be presented in words that will fill and find their way to the hearts of those who hear it. The religion of Christ, exemplified in the daily life of his followers, will exert a tenfold influence than the most eloquent sermons. Testimonies, Volume 4, page 546 to 547. As you can see, the work of the chaplain is special. The work of the chaplain is something that needs to be taken care with very, very much wisdom. You cannot choose a chaplain just because he's not a good pastor. You cannot choose a chaplain that do not have the appropriate training that is required to be a chaplain. It is extremely important that the chaplains that are chosen are well prepared, trained, and experienced. And I will say that there will be a lot more conversions into our church from our schools and in the hospitals if we are able to place good chaplains there. Remember what she said. You don't need to preach a great sermon. You don't have to be a great preacher. But you have to have the heart, the understanding, and the know-how to present the faith of God, to present the church in a way that the souls of the people will be open to hear the words of God.